Welcome to the Gracie Awards Entries Bootcamp. This is a session designed to support those who are interested in entering for the Gracie Awards and giving you insight and input into how to create the best Gracie entry. The goal for today will be to just give input into how to make those Gracie entries. Our leadership will be providing insight as longtime judges about what they're seeking when looking for Gracie entries and great submissions and what makes a winning entry. And we'll also take question and answer. The question and answer throughout, please use the chat feature. So you can put all of your questions that you have in the chat. The team will be answering questions that are quick, easy answers throughout the chat, throughout the session. Anytime that we think it's a question that is best answered by one of our leaders, we'll keep that question, and once they're done with the presentation portion, then we will ask those questions towards the end. So just a couple of quick things. Number one, please keep muted. We want to make sure that everyone can hear and stay engaged in the conversation. So if everyone can mute, and then again, make sure to, at any point, include your questions in the chat, and our team will make sure that there are answers done throughout. So with that, we are really fortunate to have with us today on our team who we consider the Gracie's expert. If you've done anything with the Gracie Awards, you are familiar with LaTonya Jackson, who serves as the AWM Foundation Director of Awards. I will introduce myself, which is Becky Brooks. I'm the president of the Alliance for Women in Media. And with us today, the true experts and truly the content people who serve on our AWM Foundation board and have been brilliantly involved in the Gracies and evaluating content as well as submitting content. We have with us Annie Howell, who is the Chief Communications Officer of Hallmark Media and one of our Gracies Co-Chairs, Heather Cohen, President of the Weiss Agency, another Gracies Co-Chair, and Mike McVay of McVay Media Consulting, our third Gracies Co-Chair. So with that, I'll toss it to LaTonya to get us started.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited for you all to be here today. I'm going to briefly walk through the submission process. I'm going to share my screen. And then, as Becky said, if you have questions, put those in the chat. But to begin your entries, you can go from our Call from Entries webpage and you will see a link to start your entry. That will take you to the Gracies.acclaimworks.com, and that is an online software system. If you have submitted in the past, you will use your same username and password. If you can't remember your password, just hit forgot password, and then the link will be sent to that email address. If this is your first time entering for the Gracies, you will need to create a complimentary account. You will just need an email address and a password, and then you can start your submissions. To be clear, all submissions are in this software system only. All of your entry descriptions, all of your content is uploaded in this one system. So to begin, we're going to click Start Your First Entry. And so to be clear, it's separated by visual, audio, and digital media. So based on which division you're wanting to enter for, you will click that radio button next to it, and then you will select whether you're national, local, or a student submission. This will make sure you're submitting categories in the right division based on your national, local, or student category. Those categories that are available to you will display below. So we have several different ones. You can look through the category sheets that are on the call for entries page and decide which ones you want to submit for. And because it's me, we're going to do comedy today.
Yay.
So, so you'll select your category, and then you'll see on the top right corner that category is available up here. Click continue. And this is where you will start your entry process. So for the show, we're going to do the connection. And I'm just making this up for today's purposes. For the entry name, so this should be the actual name of the show if it's a program. If this is an individual submission, such as actress or director or producer, for this particular area, you will want to put that person's name. But since we're doing a program, we're going to put Ha Ha Shenanigans. That's the name of our show. And then you'll want to put your company information. So most of the company names are already pre-populated in there. If you just start typing, it will just show up automatically. I'm with the Alliance for Women in Media and click Save. And all the information that we just entered is at the top of your screen. If you need to edit any of that, you can click the pencil next to the categories to make those changes. In order to make those changes, you have to do that before you actually submit the submission. So to begin, you'll want to start with your entry description. This is a brief description of how your content is by, for, or about women, and you want to give a brief synopsis explaining what the content is about. This should be 200 to 500 words. So we don't want, anything super long like a dissertation, but you want to give the judges a brief description of what the content is about that they're about to see or listen to. So to enter your entry description, just click the add button over there to the right. Sometimes if you do not see that button, you'll need to zoom out on your browser. So we're just going to put testing today. And again, I would also recommend, I find it very helpful for your entry description. If you type it in a Word document, that way you can kind of see your word count and you're prepared to go ahead and copy and paste. You can do that. And it just helps to make sure that you have the proper word count. Next, it'll ask for an entry translation. We do accept submissions that are non-English. If your submission is in a language other than English, you will want to add an entry translation. If you don't have a translation, just click the No Radio button and hit Save. Next is the entry timestamps. So we allow full-length episodes of shows, and if you do have a full-length episode, you will want to put timestamps for the particular part of the show that you want the judges to pay attention to. Um, Please note there is a minimum of 2 minutes allowed and no more than 15 minutes per entry that you're allowed to upload content for. So if you have the full-length show, that is totally acceptable. Just add a timestamp. So click the add button and then you can just type in the timestamps here. You can have more than one timestamp. I always tell people you want to get to the most engaging parts for your submission. So sometimes that can be in the middle, whatever you choose, and whatever part you want the judges to watch or pay attention to and listen to, just put that timestamp in that box right there and then just hit save. So I'm gonna hit no since I don't have one for today.
LaTonya, I think it's important though for people to understand if they do want a timestamp and they have two, how would you separate that? So let's
I'm
say
just
you
gonna
have,
hit edit.
let's say you have 10-minute and you have 12-minute. How would you separate that?
So I'm gonna do 10 minutes through 12 minutes here.
Okay. And then you have a second one that's at 14 minutes to 14:03. That just because I think this is where it gets a little tricky. Yeah. So
Right.
you're just basically spacing it down and putting,
Yeah.
okay. All right.
Yeah. So you can just space it down. You just kind of put in the timestamps. If you have more than one, just put a hard return in between that. And then you can go ahead and just put what your next segment is.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And again, if you don't have one, then that's perfectly fine. But just make sure you just put it if you do have one. Okay, so the next part is a common question that we get a lot, and it's for the clips or the entry URLs. I will ask that you ignore the no more than 3 of these. We no longer have a maximum amount of clips that you can submit. You can submit as many clips as you want to. So for that part, for the movies, we'll take a MP4 and MOV less than 1.95 gigabytes. And on each entry form, it'll tell you which type of clip is acceptable, the file type. So you can do as many as you want to. For this purposes, I'm going to click add and you'll put the title of the clip and then you will put, you'll upload the clip. So what I will tell you about this, you can use an upload or you can actually use an entry URL. See that box right down below the upload? You can use a URL to the clip. So a lot of people sometimes will use a Vimeo link or a YouTube link. You just have to have one or the other, or you can have both, but you just have to have a minimum of one clip. I'm going to say that one more time. You can upload or you can link, and you can have a minimum of one, either or both. It depends up to you. And I will say everybody's situation is different, so there's no right or wrong answer. As long as the judges can see or listen to the content, that's what we care about. There's no weight to which style of clip that you use. We just need to be able to see it. So just a quick reminder, The judges will watch up to 15 minutes of content per entry. So you can use as many clips as you want to, but they're not going to watch over 15 minutes of content per submission. I'm going to go ahead and put something in the URL for this one. So I'm just adding a link, and that way we can check that box. So it'll upload, but you don't have to wait for it to upload. And we'll move down. So now that you can see, there's a thumbnail for it, and that line is no longer red; it's now black because we have completed that task. Your next step is your original air date. If you're doing a specific series, you'll want to put the earliest air date. As long as it aired between January and December of this year, you can use just the earliest air date if you have more than one air date. As far as a series. If it's just a single show or a made-for-TV movie, for example, you'll just put that one single air date. But there's no place to put multiple air dates. We just need one air date just to make sure the show actually aired this year.
And if it's a series, because I think here's a clarification. If it's a series, LaTonya, and let's say it premiered in November, but it runs through March, for instance, that's still eligible because it ran right. And I think
Correct.
it's important. It's not based on premiere date, it's based on run date.
Yes.
Right.
So that would still be eligible as long as they aired in this year.
Okay.
Okay. And then one other thing that I will say about clips, just make sure that there's no trailers or promos. We want the actual content. So we ask in the terms and conditions that you do not use trailers. Do an actual episode that you want to be judged. We have the air date. So then the network owner or company affiliation, that's just basically letting us know who the piece is affiliated with. So sometimes you'll have a production company, sometimes you'll have a parent company, but we're just looking to see who the piece is affiliated with. For this purposes, I am with the Alliance for Women in Media, and we'll hit save. And then that satisfies that piece. What I will say is if your entry were to win, and sometimes there's a network plus the production, we'll confirm those details. So I wouldn't get bent out of shape. We just kind of want to know who it's affiliated with. But as always, if you ever have questions, you can always ask.
So I'm sorry, because I'm coming from the network side, because I know the questions my team asks. So let's say you are Big Fish production company and you're doing the submission, but your show aired on Hallmark. Who do they put?
So in general, they could, if the production company is actually submitting, they can put Big Fish. And then if it were to win, we would note that it was, Hallmark Media and Big Fish Media.
Got
So
it.
we would put both for that purposes. But I think everybody's situation is different, which is why it just depends on the affiliation and who is actually submitting.
So,
So,
for example, if you're WOR radio, make sure that you write iHeartMedia.
right. And so I think, guys, like, don't you agree? I think again, we're going to get into this when it comes to what we're looking for as judges, right? It helps to say, okay, Big Fish submitted it, but I want to know where it aired. So you should put in the description, this aired in its entirety on Hallmark Media, for instance, right? Or Hallmark Channel.
Yes.
Or it was an iHeart product that was on WOR or whatever, Heather, you're saying, right? Because I think that's important because Big Fish may not mean anything versus, and I don't mean that in any way to Big Fish because we do a lot with them and they're amazing, but we would do that in conjunction with them. I think that's important.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And then the last thing are the terms and conditions. So the terms and conditions are on the Gracie's Call for Entries page. When you add the agreement, you can also view them here. So if you click that link, it'll open up the terms and conditions in a new window. And once you have read them and agreed to them, you'll click that radio box next to it saying you agree to the terms and conditions and hit save. And then that's everything. So now at the top of the screen, at the top right, you'll see it says submit entries. Now your entry is ready to submit. If you do not fulfill all of the check boxes, then it'll tell you where you need to go back and enter information. Please note, you can start an entry, but you don't have to finish it at the same time. You can just click save and come back to it. So in general, for the entries, you'll always need an entry description. You'll need clips or links to your content. And then the rest of the information is that general information that you'll fill out about the piece. So that is everything in a nutshell for the submission process. So I'm going to hit save just so you can see how it saves. On your screen, when you submit more than one entry, they'll start stacking up. So you can go back and click haha shenanigans. It opens it back up and you're ready to go again. So that's the submission process in a nutshell. I'm going to stop sharing and then I'm going to toss it to Annie Howell, who's going to talk more about what we look for in making a great submission.
Hi, everyone. And I think we're probably going to repeat a little bit because we're coming from three different areas in how we judge. But I'm coming from the TV side, although I can speak to judging in general. And, my team over 30 years has been the ones who have submitted awards, and we've learned along the way what makes something effective and what doesn't. And I can tell you first and foremost, are you making the job of the judge as easy as possible? Because you have to remember audience first always, right? It's what do they need to know to make a decision? And so that sort of it should be the organizing principle when you're putting together your submission is like, what do they need that's going to maybe I'm doing something from radio. I'm not in the radio world. What do I need to know to adequately and fairly judge your submission if I'm not from radio? And vice versa in TV or podcasting, right? So don't assume that people understand your world. We may not know acronyms, spell them out. We may not know certain terminology, explain it. And I think also when you're talking about categories, so a director to me might be different than a director in the radio world. So first and foremost, look at the submission category. What does it say in terms of what makes it eligible? Then what makes it effective for us is if you spell that out in your description. So let's say it's a director of a television comedy. What a criteria in the description that you'll have available to you does it look for in determining a strong director? Not a favorite show, not a great music score. What we are looking at is the director. And so in your submission, writing wise, give them the why, right? Why does this person fit this submission? What did they do that makes them eligible for a Gracie as a director? Then, does your clip match the description? And this is where we see submissions falling short all the time. We will get a clip and it's just a clip and we have no idea what we're looking for. We have no idea what the submitter wanted us to see for that director. Tell us, right? So I think this is where the quality of your description really, really matters. So let's say Debbie Smith is this director. This program was by, for, and about women, and Debbie really did the following to bring this story to life in the following ways as a director. That's very different than what we'd look for a showrunner or a writer or an actress. I think one of the mistakes that is made is it's a popular show, everybody loves it. That's great, but it's not the category, and we are looking to judge very specifically in that category. Does that make sense? And does anyone have any questions on that piece? Because that's really important. The next part is, if you're going to do a whole clip versus very specific clips. So let's say I am submitting, I'll put Finding Mr. Christmas. Okay. And it's for writing. What about the writing in it's an unscripted show. We get hung up on this all the time. If you're submitting an unscripted show and it's a writer, what are they writing? Right? Or is it the beats? Is it the intro? What is it? And tell us why. And then if it's a show that's a male led, what about that show was by, for, or about women? Right? Because we award lots of men. But ultimately, we're looking for that as the consideration, right? So if you're going to do a whole episode or a whole chunk, that's where the time codes that LaTonya was talking about comes in really important. So for writing, we want you to look at these 3 time codes because it's really going to show you the strength of this writer. And that might mean that I'm going to resubmit for Finding Mr. Christmas and it's going to be host. I might have 3 completely separate time codes to show you the host, right? So that's sort of the long and the short of it, but that really is ultimately what we're looking for. The why, the relevance to the actual category, and the supporting materials to back it up without us trying to sit there going, I don't know what this has to do with a director, or I don't know what this has to do with writing. Help us do that work. And LaTonya, do you want me to pass it back to you to have Mike pick up?
You can pass it to Mike.
Mike. Oh, it's Friday. Doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
it's not Wednesday, not Wednesday. First off, it's pretty cool to say there's some big names on this thing today. Seeing folks who are running content and curating for entire companies and some very big name talent here. And so I love that. And I love seeing a couple other guys too. Thank you. Um, every year, all of us who are on the board hear from people saying, what is it I need to do to make sure my entry is the best it can be? And we talk about different things like content placement or, starting with something about your community, or if it's a funny show, give me the funniest thing first.
Yes.
What is it your show's trying to get across? But here's what I would say to you. Most of you who've worked in audio have created air checks to send with resumes for jobs. Think in that mindset. What is unique about your show? What is it that you do that everybody else isn't doing? If you start with War of the Roses, Second Date Update, etc., our judges will tend to lean into, well, those are kind of syndicated things that people do. They'll listen to you. They may judge you locally. They may judge you for your specific talent. But what is it that's unique about you? In 3 to 5 minutes, how can you show me the fun, the community connection, the things you do for charity, the things that you do with each other that show great chemistry and could make someone want to listen to your show? Because that's what you want the judges to feel. You want the judges to feel, I like this show. I would listen to this show. And so really look back across the year and think about the very best things you've done, or when you're live on location, the things that people come up and say to you they enjoy hearing you do, because those are the types of things that will resonate. Now, if you're on the news side, you want to make sure that you're doing something that I can't get from a network feed, unless what you're presenting is a network feed. It becomes about the writing in that case. It becomes about how you can use audio to sell a story or paint a picture. But it also becomes about how credible and believable you are in your delivery. I'm sure Heather will talk more about that because a lot of the experience she has is in that regard to news. In looking at talent and looking at personalities, be it a podcast, be it a radio show, whatever it is you're doing, let that personality come through. But keep in mind, you've got 3 to 5 minutes. Heather.
Thank you, Mike. It's always fun to be with Mike and Annie, and it's so great to see so many faces and people that I have missed and love and just new faces as well. So let me repeat this. Please make the job of the judge, the judge's job rather, easy as possible. Make everything super clear. These judges are dedicating countless hours of time, and at some point they will get tired. And you don't want to catch them at a moment where, oh my goodness, I've been doing this for X amount of hours. This is just too difficult. This submission is just too hard for me. So please be very, very aware of that. Also, I feel it's so important to be incredibly intentional, like everyone else is sharing, with the material that you are entering. I've had many people say to me, oh, well, I did these 3 great interviews of these men. Well, let's think about it for a moment. Let's be very deliberate here. If it's an interview with a doctor talking about an issue pertaining to women and it's a man, sure. But if you're doing a music radio show, for example, and you're interviewing 3 male artists, maybe make a different selection. That may be a little bit smarter because again, it's by women, for women, or about women. You don't have to check every box, but you should be very aware that you're checking some of these boxes for sure. It's important, and the judges are looking for that. Mike mentioned comedy before. There have been times over the years where the judges have been like, wait, I'm judging a comedy category. Why aren't I laughing? Is this actually a comedy? So again, really focus in on the description that we have on the website, because that's very intentional from our standpoint. And, in terms of making people laugh, making people cry, engaging the judges, show that you can be informative. Obviously, it varies depending on what category you're entering, but I happen to like it when we get submissions where, and I'll go to radio here, but maybe there are 3 or 4 different segments. And one does, evoke emotion, and one shows the person's ability to be a really wonderful storyteller. Or maybe there's some unbelievable production embedded within that content. So we're looking for all of those things. And remember, the judges all come from very different worlds and very different sides of content. You may have a judge from the digital space, from the radio world, from television, someone who's more behind the scenes, someone that's a director. So really be aware of the different types of people that may be viewing or listening to your content. Okay, let's talk about the entries. So I know that LaTonya hit on that it's really 200 to 500 words. Use every word wisely. And I have to tell you, there have been years where Becky and Annie and Mike and I have looked at, a beautiful piece of content and there's no description. That is so vital. It's so important. And also, I know that so many of you are incredibly humble, but I will say this. It is so important to write what the description is to make the judge's life easier, but it's okay if you brag about yourself a little bit, or if you're a producer perhaps who's entering a talent, it's okay if you say so-and-so has been #1 in Chicago for the last 10 years. That's fine. Or so-and-so has raised $35 million for cancer. That's okay to throw in, breast cancer. Throw in that line. I always like it when I feel like I can connect with whoever that talent is or whoever that director is, whatever it may be. I happen to enjoy it when I see this is an entire production team of all women. That's interesting. So again, be very deliberate with how you're doing those descriptions and spend time on them and edit them. You can always go back in and make changes and just be aware of that. So don't be nervous the first time that you're putting it together. Okay, let's go back to time codes because there have been many years where, it could be the most popular show on television and they may be entering for best ensemble cast. Well, if we're watching for 20 minutes and we don't see a woman, we have a problem, right? We just have a problem. So again, don't put yourself at risk for being disqualified or perhaps getting a poor score just because you're not doing that one simple thing that will make everyone's lives that much easier. And then another thing, there have been countless times where judges are saying, wait, I can't find the actress. Is this the actress? Is that the actress?
Right.
And judges have to Google to see like, oh, wait, that looks like the actress. Is that her? So again, like we're repeating this, but it's actually that important to do these things. And then like such a frustrating period of time when a judge gets like, they're so excited, they want to open this entry or listen to this entry, view this entry, and the link has expired. I know we mentioned that before, but here's also an issue that we face. Sometimes there's an outside service that is putting together this entry, or maybe you have a producer that's putting together this entry, or somebody from production from one of your stations or networks. Well, I would always double check the work. This is that important. It's, not the cheapest thing to do either. So why don't you double check that person's work? Just because sometimes mistakes happen. Sometimes the person that's doing it may not realize, and I've done this myself, by the way, that a link has expired. So I really think that that is incredibly important. Anything else, Annie or Mike, that I'm missing here?
Yeah, I had a couple things to add to what you said, Heather. Because there's also like we always joke like we're not Nancy Drew super sleuth, and we love a mystery, but not during judging. But I think it's really important to make sure you're also picking the right category. And if you don't see your category, reach out to LaTonya and she can help you figure out where that could go. Because we'll sit there and be like, I love this. It's amazing. We cannot award this because it's just in the wrong category, which makes the eligible, it's not fair to the ones that are in the right category, right? So that's a conundrum a lot. I think what Heather just said is extremely important. I always have very young people, very new, working on submissions, but we do it with training wheels. We never hit that submit button without somebody who hasn't, knows how to do it, knows what to look for, is at least looking it over. Yes, the links, does it, and is this emblematic? Did we pick the right clip? It is expensive. And we're going to get the best shot if those submissions are the top quality to match your work.
Yeah, and jumping off of that, Annie, I think as you were saying that, I was going to say, if you're a talent working in radio, ask your program director what they think of the audio, or ask somebody else or a mentor or a friend what they think of it. Because Heather and I are so deeply involved in radio, we'll often sit in these rooms and we'll know the talent and we'll be like, wow, they're better than what they submitted.
Yeah.
And it kills us because the judges have scored it till we see it in the review pan. And so we're not sitting there changing the judges' scores. We're checking to make sure everything adds up. And so there have been those times, and it's why I say to you, what's unique? What's your best stuff? If it's a radio station, music radio station, anybody can read the weather, the traffic, or introduce songs. What are you known for? That's what you want to submit because that's what gets the judge's attention. And like I said, and I know Annie feels the same way. We've sat there and she's been like, I know this actress.
I know it's like
And you're
this is
just
not
dying. Yeah.
you are dying because they deserve the recognition because their body of work. And that's another thing. I think, even if you're putting something in very specific, you can note their body of work as well, right? And I will tell you, we put so much love and care into our judging. We will sit there for a good long time and go, what is it that the judges were hearing that they didn't see what we know? And we'll go back and we'll listen to all of it, right? So that's a really tough situation to be in. I've heard Heather and Mike go through that, and they've heard me on the TV side, right? So I think that's really, really important. I think what Mike just said is really important. Put the human in. At the end of the day, we are judging human beings and their contributions, no matter what it is to this content. So humanize it. And that's why I've heard Heather say a few times, the emotion, the engagement, the feels, that resonates, right? So like what I know, I will write down, oh God, I gotta go back and listen to that podcast. That's amazing. Or we'll all write down, I'm watching that TV show, right? You want that to be how we feel in the judging room. Like you resonated with us to the point that we want to be consumers of it too.
May I add, be very careful with with the segment that you put first. If
Yeah.
you're doing multiple segments, you don't know exactly how long that judge will watch or listen. We just have no idea. So put your best stuff first. Why not? I think that makes so much sense. And Annie, let's go back to being really careful that you're choosing the right category because every year someone will enter public where it's commercial
Right.
or or someone will enter for syndication when it's clearly local or the other way around or a music show will enter a talk category. Please be so careful and like Annie said, you can always go to LaTonya or anyone on the team just to double check that you've done this the right way.
I'll jump in on a couple of things to add in based on what we've talked about. And first, thank you for everybody for all the questions. Those continue to be entered in the chat, so feel free to chime in. A couple of things that I've heard that it's important for everybody on the call to understand. We've used the term a couple of times, quote, program versus individual entry. That's super important to understand the difference. I'm going to use podcast as an example because there have been several questions about podcasts. Every single media vertical, every single area has submissions in two different ways. One is the program itself, and the other is, we're going to call it the talent. So you can enter, number one show could be entered in multiple categories. It could be entered in let's use podcast as an example that I'm in. We're going to do entertainment in podcast. We're going to enter the host for the podcast. We're also going to enter the producer for the podcast. You can enter in more than one category. It is important to know that for the program, based on everything that you're hearing, the very, very wise advice that you're hearing from this team, when you're entering the podcast as a whole, you're going to want to submit content from more than one podcast that aired. So if you're only submitting one link to one piece or one podcast example, then we're really only hearing one example of that entire podcast. So there's a difference. Again, that's the program, the full program itself. Individual is the talent who is actually hosting it. It could be co-hosted, it could be hosted, whatever that might be. So when you go through and are actually submitting, you will see the difference between the program versus an individual. It's critically important. And as talent, again, these Gracies Co-Chairs have said that I'm going to want to submit more than just me talking for 2 minutes one time because it's my full body of work for that year. So those are two key pieces of information to be considering is both the podcast as a whole, that's considered a quote program, or the talent, which is an individual. And in all scenarios, as much as possible, you want to make sure that you're representing, give enough content for all of it. Another piece of that, something Annie said triggered this earlier. One of the questions we're getting a lot and is this content was multi-platform. It was a podcast, it was streamed, and it's also online. Where do I enter it and how do I acknowledge that? What we always recommend is enter that content, that piece, that talent in the primary area where you want to, quote, compete. So if it's the talent that you're submitting and they were on a local radio station somewhere, but then it was also a podcast, completely fine. But what you want to do is enter the primary category in which that makes sense. And then in your entry description, we keep talking about entry descriptions, you should note, we also did a YouTube live, or we went live on TikTok, and then that was our accompaniment piece. We want to know when content was done in multiple platforms. Feel free to include that in your entry description. Just select the primary category that you think makes most sense. The other thing I want to highlight, this has come up a couple of times already from our Gracies Co-Chairs, is the judges are going to come from every background. So what we do on purpose is that we will recruit judges, and judges will volunteer, and they will have a media background, but it will be from either audio or visual or whatever that might be, both content creators, those have been in the industry, but in some way are tied to media. On purpose, you will have people, a collection of judges evaluating every single entry. Every entry will be viewed or listened to and given a score, every single entry. And so it's important to know that, and Annie, Mike, and Heather are the right mix, because the three of them would be an example of a judging team that we would put together. You are going to have audio people watching your visual, and you are going to have visual people listening to your audio. So you have to make sure that that content and that submission is geared towards someone who could be an expert in any background or form of media, not just your particular media vertical. We do it on purpose because Heather and Mike are not going to sit and listen to audio for 8 hours a day and then us assume that they're going to be able to give it its best evaluation. So that's done on purpose. A couple of other things, just speaking of judging, the judging is done based on 6 pretty straightforward criterion, and that's a compelling delivery, creative approach, and an innovative approach. It needs to be engaging. We've heard that multiple times. That is an actual score that is given, is engaging. It needs to be entertaining/informative. That's one score, because a news piece might be more informative or it could be entertaining. It could be both. It needs to be memorable. That's one of those sort of gray fuzzy criterion that we say a lot. It needs to be memorable. And very basic, but also very important, is the quality of the audio and visual that is being uploaded. So those are the 6 criterion. Judging and the scoring will go in, and those are the 6 criterion. The judges will rate all independently how they feel the submission was based on those 6 criterion. And then it is a combined score that ultimately gets rolled up. So that is an important piece. Okay. LaTonya, anything else that you're seeing in the chat or anything else we might want to make sure we address?
I did have one question in the chat that I'll just note. And this one was about a long form documentary and whether they should use different segments. And so what I'll say is when you're in doubt and you have a long form piece, you can always upload the full episode. And then again, as we've mentioned several times, just include in the timestamp section which parts you want the judges to focus on. The judges are required to watch up to 15 minutes, but sometimes if they, as the review panel said, if they have more content they want to see or it's already there. So just note you can always use a full length episode and just add timestamps, but that entry description is integral as well. Noting it in the entry description, what is most important about the piece and what you want to highlight. Brag on it.
So as a TV person, and I know that you would never put a trailer as the submission. However, I want a clarity there is you could have a trailer as a piece of evidence, right? So that you have your trailer that gives the synopsis of the whole, and then you have very specific clips that give the example of the story. Because I think sometimes with a doc or a long series that has many story beats, it's hard to kind of to tell that whole thing with a series of clips. So I think sometimes that trailer helps do the initial work, but it cannot be a standalone submission. Does that resonate with you, LaTonya?
Yes, and I think when we see trailers, sometimes it doesn't really highlight, what the program really is about, which is why we ask for episodes or clips versus trailers. So if you're using it as a supporting piece, but then also upload full length content or the full episode or the clip of the episode, then that would be, permissible.
And I would say there's a trailer here just to help set the tone for what this story is, and then here's the supporting clips that I want to that are the submission.
Yes.
For me, that helps as a TV person.
I don't see any other questions in the chat. And what I'll additionally say as the person who answers a lot of the questions in the Gracie's inbox, if you all have questions, you can always send them our way. Sometimes when you get started, you'll come up with a question. So don't be afraid to ask questions. If you have questions about categories, clips, anything like that, just email gracies@allwomeninmedia.org, and we'll be glad to address your questions. So. Becky,
Yes,
it's been asked to repeat the judging criteria one more time.
I'm just going to copy and paste that into the chat. That's
I just did.
Amy, way to do it. Oh, Amy just did it.
It's done.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, of course.
The dream team. Okay, Heather, Mike, Annie, anything else?
Let me just say that it's pretty cool to see this amazing group. I mean, I'm seeing film producers and directors, I'm seeing content creators in both audio and video side. I mean, and we know this is a small fraction of the people that will enter Gracies, but this is impressive that you're all here. And I think it screams volumes for your interest and the level of participation that you're bringing to this. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I also see one or two past Gracie winners. So I think it's wonderful that you're here as well. But we're very, very excited and we're here to help. And we have the greatest team with Becky and LaTonya and Amy and everyone over at AI. So we're here to support you.
Here. I won't repeat it, but I just thank you all for taking the time to speak with us today.
Wonderful. Well, thank you everybody for your time here. As LaTonya said, please feel free to email Gracies at allwomeninmedia.org at any time. Everyone on the team, on our team, has access to that email. We will make sure that answers are responded to quickly. We will help guide when it comes to categories and submissions. When you're looking and you're feeling overwhelmed and confused, anytime, all the time, we will help guide, support whatever is needed. The most important thing to remember is that the Gracie Awards is the largest fundraiser of the year for the AWM Foundation. This is a foundation, and what we do is programs and scholarships. So every submission is a fundraiser to allow us to do great work for students and for the next generation of women in media. So we appreciate all of you and look forward to seeing some great submissions this year.